In this video, I'm going to show you how to use the TCP import-export functionality of Hobbits to integrate with GNU Radio. So in Hobbits, in order to import data via TCP, you go to File, Import Bits From, TCP Data, and then you select a port that you're going to listen on for the TCP data. So we're listening on port 5055 for TCP data that we'll be importing into Hobbits. We'll go over to GNU Radio, and here we have a simple setup of GNU Radio blocks where we're generating a simple wave, a sine wave, and sending it out as socket PDU block, which is in the TCP client mode. In the TCP client mode, you select a host that you're sending the data to and a port. In this case, since we're listening on port 5055, we've set the host to localhost and the port to 5055. So this should, when we run it, send a sine wave over TCP to the Hobbits TCP importer that's listening on port 5055. So when we run this, we get control over the frequency that the signal source is using. And then we can check on the Hobbit side to see that we're receiving data. And then when we think we've sent enough data, we can just stop. And then in Hobbits, we can see the floating point sine wave data. So now we want to export this data back into GNU Radio so that we can verify that we imported it correctly and can export it correctly to GNU Radio. So in order to export data, you go to File, Export Bits to, TCP Data. You select the host. So we're going to be listening on localhost again, on port 5055. This time the TCP server is going to be in GNU Radio though. So let's set up the listener in GNU Radio. We have this TCP receive audio flow that has the same socket PDU block but set up in TCP server mode. We're listening on port 5055. That's where we're sending the data to. I think the other thing I had to do was increase this buffer because Hobbits is just going to send all the data at once. It's not going to wait for the sample rate. So we'll start listening. And then we'll go back over to Hobbits. And we'll send the data. So Hobbit sent all the data, it buffered in GNU Radio, and now we're getting all these fun bleep bloop noises. That's a good bleep. Okay, yeah, so the data came in, it went to the audio sync, we could hear that it went from GNU Radio, from the send audio into Hobbits, and then we sent it back in, and then out the audio sync. And so that's a simple example of how you can use the socket PDU block to integrate with the Hobbits TCP import-export capabilities.